Welcome to the Non-Negotiable Living podcast, where we're building lives by design by creating non-negotiable habits around fitness, family, faith, and financial freedom.
Welcome back to Non-Negotiable Living. I'm Ashley, and today we're diving into one of the biggest frustrations I see with my clients, and it's why weight loss often feels like it's much harder for women than it is for men. And spoiler alert, it's not just because women lose fat slower. In fact, a man and a woman both following the same type of calorie deficit consistently could lose fat at the same rate. But the big catch is that when it comes to fat loss, it isn't just calories in, calories out when it comes to women. Hormones play a big role in this. So women's bodies are constantly shifting and adapting to the phases of their menstrual cycle, which impacts water retention, hunger, energy levels, and even motivation to work out. So today we're going to break it all down, phase by phase, and I'm going to give you the tools to work with your body instead of constantly fighting it. So we're going to start off talking about women's weight fluctuations and why it happens to women more than men. So let's start with the truth bomb. The scale is going to fluctuate for you as a woman more than your husband, more than a man, and that is 100% normal. And yes, so frustrating. I know. And this isn't because women are less consistent or doing something wrong. It's because women's hormones shift throughout the month. And these shifts actually affect water retention, digestion, energy levels, and even how much food our body wants. Men, on the other hand, have relatively stable hormone levels from day to day throughout the month, so their weight trends are more predictable. With women, our weight can swing up or down a few pounds, even if we're eating the exact same foods, doing the exact same workouts, and staying totally consistent. And it's a total mental game, and I know that it's tough, and it's easy to feel like you're failing when the scale spikes out of nowhere unexpectedly, but that's why understanding your cycle is so important. So when you know why it's happening, you can stop second guessing yourself and stay on track. So we're going to dig into the phases of your cycle and how they impact your weight, your hunger, and your workouts. So we're going to start with the menstrual phase. So that's days 1 through 5. So what's happening during this phase is your estrogen and progesterone drop sharply, and it triggers your period. So this is when many women actually see a dip in weight during or right after when their period starts. And this is because water retention drops after that pre-period hormone surge. So when we go through the PMS surge, that's when the weight goes up, and when our period starts, sometimes the weight actually drops. So let's talk about energy levels. Energy tends to be a little bit lower during this phase, at least that 1 to 2 days at the beginning of your period. So a lot of women will prioritize just light movement, like walking, gentle strength training, and that can feel better than super intense workouts. Now, I'm not a big person when it comes to like cycle syncing or adjusting my workouts based on my menstrual cycle. I never have been. I don't believe it's necessary. I acknowledge the fact that I may not be able to lift as heavy, but I find that sticking with my consistent regimen makes my body feel better overall. You have to do what you're comfortable with, but some of the women in my program will tend to shift their workouts later in the week so that they're not necessarily working out on those first 2 days of their period when they have the heaviest bleeding. So let's talk about hunger cues. Appetite can vary during this time. Some women lose their appetite temporarily and others crave foods. And a lot of times it's carbs. I know for me it's carbs. But listening to your body is key. So I would say if you tend to be extra hungry during your period, your body is telling you something. Make sure that you're satiating yourself. Your body is going through a whole biological process, and we don't want to deny it food that it needs, but we just want to be reasonable. If every time you have your period, you crave funnel cakes and ice cream, that's definitely not the best default. But if you just feel like you need an extra couple hundred calories during those days of your period, there's nothing wrong with that. Next, we're going to dive into the follicular phase. So that's days 6 through 14 of your cycle. And during that time, estrogen starts to rise, and this phase tends to be the most stable and predictable part of a woman's cycle. As far as weight fluctuations go, this is where you'll most likely see new lows on the scale because your water retention's at its lowest. From an energy perspective, estrogen boosts energy. So it's a great time for high intensity workouts if you're feeling strong and energized. And from a hunger perspective, hunger is generally lower here, which makes it easier to stick to your calorie deficit if you're trying to lose body fat. So this is the best time to really push your workouts, focus on hitting your macros, and take advantage of those energy boosts and kind of the stability of your hormones. Next is the ovulation phase. So during this phase, that's days 15 and through 17. This is when you're most likely to get pregnant, so be careful, ladies. So what's happening is your estrogen peaks and your progesterone starts to rise to prepare for a potential pregnancy. So during this time, our water retention increases. So don't be surprised if the scale ticks up, even if you're consistent. From an energy perspective, you might feel a brief energy boost right before ovulation, but after ovulation, you might start to feel your energy drop off. Your hunger might increase slightly as your body starts preparing for the second half of your cycle. The key here is not to panic if the scale jumps a bit. This is hormonal weight retention. It's not fat gain, so stay consistent, and those new lows will come after this phase passes. The next part is the luteal phase. So this is days 18 through 28. So what's happening during this phase is your progesterone is peaking and your estrogen starts to drop again. And this is the most challenging phase for many women. From a weight standpoint, water retention is at its highest. So the scale may spike 2 to 3 pounds, even if you're in a calorie deficit, even if you're super consistent, even if you're not having any cheat days. And your energy tends to dip, so you might feel more tired and sluggish. So this is a good time to prioritize moderate workouts rather than all-out intensity. And on the hunger side, hunger often increases, especially for carb-rich comfort foods. And this is totally normal. Your body's progesterone is influencing your blood sugar regulation, and a lot of times your body's going to crave carbs. If your cravings are feeling out of control, it's okay to slightly increase your calories during this phase as well. Obviously, increasing your calories might mean that your weight loss is going to be slower, but it will make your plan more sustainable long term. The worst thing that you could do is try and deny yourself the foods that you need and then make it unsustainable and end up binge eating more calories than you would have if you had just allocated yourself another couple 100 calories in carbs to make yourself feel better. So let's talk about how we handle the scale and stay sane. So if the scale is messing with your head, you've got a couple options. There's a couple different approaches when it comes to weighing in that I like to address. So one thing that you can do that I personally do is I weigh myself in daily. So a lot of people are like, I don't want to weigh myself a lot. And that's totally fine. If it doesn't serve you, then don't do it. But for me, it's science, it's numbers, it's facts. It allows me to acknowledge how my body changes from day to day and throughout the weeks. So I weigh myself every day, and it gives me the opportunity to look at, okay, what did I eat yesterday? How did that affect my weight? Where am I at my cycle? How does that affect my weight? So when you weigh yourself every day and log it, you're also able to acknowledge like where in your cycle those spikes and drops happen. And you'll start seeing patterns and realize that some of those spikes are just water retention and not fat gain. You could also switch to once a month weigh-in. So if you're consistent with your food and workouts, weighing yourself once a month during your follicular phase when the water retention is the lowest can be really productive. This is great for somebody who might just be in maintenance and trying to maintain a certain weight and body fat percentage, because once a month obviously doesn't give you an opportunity to make adjustments as you go throughout the month if you need to make them to get to a certain goal. With my clients, we do the once a week weigh-in method in midweek. Now, the hard part about this is somebody's weight can be down one day because they're in the follicular phase, but the next week or the week after, they could be going into a phase where they have high water retention, so then the scale spikes and they're unsure why. I tend to do midweek because most people are pretty consistent Monday through Friday. It's the weekends that most people get off track, so we tend to do midday weigh-ins, and obviously we always zoom out and look at the long term of how they're doing. So one weight spike doesn't mean anything's going wrong. It could indicate a fat loss phase. It could mean water retention. There are so many different things that we have to acknowledge. Now, another option is just ditching the scale entirely. So if you struggle with that mentality around the scale and any fluctuations on it can make you uncomfortable or anxious, then, relying on inch measurements and progress photos and how our clothes fit is a fantastic non-scale way to measure progress. So for some women, removing the scale is the healthiest way to stay consistent. So you have to do what you're comfortable with. You have to do what makes the most sense for you. But please remember that the number on the scale is not the full story. If you're hitting your protein, getting your workouts in, staying consistent, you are making progress. Whether the scale is cooperating or not, it doesn't matter. We have to remember that the goal shouldn't be weight loss for the sake of losing weight. The goal should be fat loss and muscle growth so that we can improve our metabolism, increase our longevity, increase our functional independence, increase our bone density, prevent osteoporosis. There are so many things that we should be focusing on and not just the scale. As a whole, we just have to remember that women's weight loss isn't harder because we lose fat slower. It's harder because our hormones make the process unpredictable. And when you understand that, when you learn to expect the fluctuations, when you track your cycle and you adjust your mindset, everything will get easier. So the key is to work with your body, not against it. So please stop throwing in the towel every time the scale spikes. It's just your hormones and they're doing their thing. It's not telling you that you're failing, you're not doing anything wrong. It's just biological. And I know you can absolutely reach your goals. You just need to understand how your body works and give yourself the grace to move through those phases with patience and trust. You're not broken. Your body is doing exactly what it's designed to do. So we have to trust the process, trust yourself, and stay consistent. And if you need some support, making sure that you're exercising and fueling your body the right way for your goals, and you're not just stuck because you don't have the education to get to your goals, then reach out to me. I'd love to support you in this journey. The women here are getting incredible results. They're absolutely crushing it. And they're breaking free of the scale-only mindset so that they can truly understand all the progress that they're making. So thanks for tuning in to Non-Negotiable Living. If this episode gave you some light bulb moments, share it with a friend who's also on a health journey. And let's normalize talking about hormones and make fat loss easier for women everywhere. So until next time, stay consistent, stay strong, and I'll see you soon. You guys got this.